Alright, we're going to be making one of my 8-ounce tin candles, and this is the process. So first, because I work in my kitchen, I like to spread out packing paper over my stove. This keeps wax from getting on my nice glass top, and it's also easy to just roll up and throw away after. So that is how I protect my surface. So the way I start is I have my scale here, and I use a silicone grip on it to keep, well, several things. To keep the pouring pitcher from sliding around, and also to keep it from getting messy, which doesn't always work, but the idea is there. So here's my pouring pitcher. I use a different one for each scent. I'll be making 6 scents today, 5 for an order and 1 for me to keep. But I wash each pitcher after I use it. But before I start a new candle, I'll just clean it out with some alcohol. This is just regular rubbing alcohol. And I'll wipe it out with a paper towel, and the alcohol will evaporate pretty quickly. Alright, so I'll put it on my scale. My scale usually automatically tears to 0. That just sets the baseline to 0, so no weight, no nothing. This is my wax. I use what's called Soy Bliss wax, and I use what was a garlic chopper to cut it because it lets me cut in neat squares, which makes it easy to measure the wax in case I have to take out some. It's easy to take out small pieces than it is big chunks, and it also keeps the block of wax neat, so that when I put it away or need to store it, I don't have a bunch of random chunks laying around. So I'm almost where I need to be. So I like to just chop in cubes. Perfect. Alright, so there is my wax. All chopped and ready to go. And usually when I have several projects, because I do use a different pot for each wax, I'll go through to try to speed things up a little bit and just lay all of my wax out up front so that I can just grab a new pan or a new pot, excuse me, and put it on to melt while I'm pouring the other candle. So it's just back to back. Almost. See how it was a little bit over? Under. Alright, a little bit over is fine. I can deal with that. Alright. And I'll do the third pot off camera, but I am done with that for now. And I will move my wax out of the way. And I'll show you my tins. These are my tins. These are, don't worry, I'll clean them off after. So these are the ones for an order. And this one, this is also an 8-ounce tin, but this is for me. This is my keep one. I made it a different one so that I know, you know, hey, I don't have to be as strict with that one. I'm a little more lax with my own. So the before we get to the prep, I'll show you what's jingling right now. I usually keep, so I wear a Smock apron, and the things I reach for the most I usually keep in my pockets. So I have my wick trimmer so that when I'm ready to put the lid on, I can just trim the wick down and it's good to go. I have 2 mixing spoons. So this is how I mix my scents in the pouring pot. I have my infrared thermometer, a Sharpie so that I can label the candle, so it's easier to keep track if I just write directly on the paper. Usually I'll draw a little arrow. And this is my little gram scale. So that is usually how I measure fragrance oils if it's less than whole ounce amounts, because I use Anchor measuring glasses for my fragrance oils, and I've done this enough to where it's pretty accurate to follow the measure marks, the measure lines on here, so I can usually just use those and not need to break out the scale. But if it's like 0.65 or 0.23, then I will use this. Same, turn it on, tear it, add the scents. And these things usually stay in random pockets, whichever pocket I happen to shove it in. Like right now, they're going in the opposite pockets they were in because I am ridiculous. Okay, so here is where I start the wax melting process. I use the double boiler method. So I put water in this pot. This is my trusty candle pot. It is only used for that. And my wax. So I'll try to put it just so it doesn't boil over, because I use a hot plate because it's more portable and my stove is out of commission while I work. I use a hot plate and it boils over pretty quickly. So what I like to do is start with the pot half full, and then if it's not enough, I'll add a little more water until it is about the same level as the wax. That usually works, and I don't have any issues with uneven wax or anything like that. It works. So that is on the boiler now, and while that is going on, I will show you how I prep the tins. So same thing, these are fresh out of the package from the manufacturer, but sometimes you don't really know who's handled it or just what's happened in transit. So always good to clean your tins before you use them. Same process, just alcohol. These are the 2-ounce bottles I use for my spray, my room sprays, but I also found it just handy and kind of cute to hold my alcohol in it. Same process, spray the tin. Wipe it with a paper towel. And with these, I use CD22 wicks. Those are the wicks that I use for these 10 candles. It's a 6-inch wick right here, and I'll do the same process just because I want to make sure that when you're burning the candle and the wax gets hot, the wick doesn't lift, or it doesn't lift as I'm pouring the candle, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to get a wick stuck back to the bottom of a tin full of wax. It's usually a whole mess and just, it doesn't work. So clean the bottom of the wick off, put my wick sticker on. I switched to these. I used to use the little sticky glue dot type ones, but I found that pouring the hot wax they kept lifting and I would just have floaty wick mess. So I switched to these and haven't had any issues since. Alright, so the wick is ready to go, the tin is ready to go, and I've gotten good at sort of eyeballing where the center is, and I don't push down on it until I'm absolutely certain that I am equidistant. I don't know. So I'll lightly place it. That looks centered, and then I'll press down on both sides. Don't need a whole lot of pressure, just enough to get it to stick like that. And then I will usually put a wick tool on it. I forgot to grab those. Let me grab those. All right, got my wick holders. As you can see, I have different types, some wooden ones. These are for making sure your wicks are an even distance apart in some containers. For different sizes, you can get these from candle companies. 1617 I think is where these are from. There's some independent Etsy sellers that sell 3D printed ones in like custom colors or whatever you need. But for the tins, I use these, just classic, I like to call them bow tie wick holders. So with these, we'll put it in the middle. You can do it this way or this way. I don't like to use it upside down like this because if I pour too much wax, then this is sitting in wax and kind of makes the top look crappy. So I'll flip it this way to where it sort of rests inside the groove. I don't pull on the wick too hard because I don't want to pull it out of the little tab here. Can you see that? I don't want to pull it out of there. So what I'll do is I will make sure to twist the wick a little bit, and I will hold it firmly but push into that little lip there, and then just move it off to the side. And now it's ready to go. So when it's time to pour this candle, I'll just pour it on the side, and yeah, the wick is out of the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and wick the rest of these while my wax melts and line them up. All right, now that those are all wicked, there is nothing I need to do except cleanup. The wax is bubbling. And get ready to mix my scent. Alright, my wax is just about ready. So it is time to mix the fragrance oil. So because this is one of my most popular scents, I already have it pre-made. So you see I wrote oil blend only. This means it's not a spray. It's not already mixed and ready to be poured into a bottle for a spray. It is just the oil. So it's ready to just pour in a candle or a melt or mix with the other ingredients to make a spray. It's only the oil. I've made that mistake before. So hence the line stressing only. Relying on memory to know, oh hey, this is just the oil, has led to many wasted bottles of scent. So I know I said sometimes if it's less than the measure marks on here, I'll use my little gram scale, affectionately called the drug dealer scale, but I didn't call it that. But because I know I need just a little over half an ounce, I'll just use the ½ ounce mark and pour to just above that. So I will pour my oil. I like to pour from the side and stand back. Sometimes I spill it. I don't mind. We can't all have steady hands. Alright, so that's a good amount. And now I'm going to bring my wax over. So I let my wax get to about 200 degrees. 204. Not bad. It's not going to burn. It's not going to scorch. And it cools off pretty quickly. So once it hits 200, sometimes 196, I'll pull it because it's melted enough. But sometimes you get to that and it still has chunks in it. Entirely up to you whether you want to leave it to melt more. I like to let it melt more because once you pull it off, it starts cooling off reasonably quickly. And then you want to add your fragrance oil at a pretty high temperature. So you see how it's already almost at 200. So I'll add my fragrance oil here and I'll just stir it in. I don't know why I scraped the bottom of my pouring pitcher. I think that's just a habit from cooking. Like you want to scrape the whole bottom, but you can just stir it gently. I'll try to be mindful so that it's not too noisy. Despite what popular Facebook comments might say, your oil won't burn off if you pour it into the wax at this high temperature. It'll be fine. And if anything, it helps your fragrance oil bind with the wax better at this high temperature. So I'll stir it both ways. Usually I'll switch hands so that I can still check the temperature. See how it's steady dropping. So once it gets to about 165, that's when I'll pour it. 165, 160. You don't want to pour it too hot because then you'll get, your candle will sink. It'll sink down in the middle and you'll get holes around the wick, or it'll tunnel, or it just won't settle very pretty. And if you pour it too cold, it's a Goldilocks thing, as cliche as it sounds. If you pour it too cold, it'll turn out like shit. If you pour it too hot, it'll turn out like shit. So you kind of gotta experiment to find out how the best temperature is gonna be for you to pour. That is entirely dependent on the wax you use, the fragrance oils you use. I'm at altitude, so that also comes into play. Candles, it's a science. It can be a very fussy science. So this is at 161, so I'm gonna pour it now. So pull this up and just pour it from the side. Just a steady pour. You also don't want to pour too fast because you'll get bubbles in it, and that won't work very well. And there. All poured, all ready to go. So I will slide that back. I try not to move it too much. And that is my burlesque candle, which is a saucy, spicy, sexy scent. So I will write on my paper, burlesque, and draw an arrow. You can't see it. Sorry if that's not helpful, but it's there. Please trust me. I wouldn't lie to you. So that is how I pour my candles, and I'll be cleaning this pot out so that I can reuse it. The second pot of wax is already on the melter to be melted and ready to go. So I'll just be cleaning this, filling my next pot with wax, and yeah, just going until all 6 candles are done. And that is it. Thank you very much for tuning in. The usuals, if you like, if you want to see more, subscribe. If not, that's okay. Just move as your heart tells you to. But either way, if you watch this far, thank you very much. Have a great day.